Today we have with us Briana Payton. She is a senior in the sociology department at Princeton and a 2016 recipient of the Truman Scholarship, which is for public service leadership. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Briana.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me to come.
Of course. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? So your background, where are you from, what are you up to right now?
Sure. So I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, West Side, and I was originally from the city, and I moved to the suburbs about halfway through my childhood and went to school there, but still kind of kept a lot of connections to the city because of family and community organizations, my tennis coach, things like that. And I had a really, really supportive community around me when I was growing up. My parents are really great and have always really pushed me to be the best that I could be. And I had really, really great teachers and counselors in middle school and high school that I really credit the village that I was raised in a lot for kind of pushing me towards the places that I've come today. I also really appreciated just different experiences that I got of being able to be involved in really, I think valuable organizations that developed in me from a young age: leadership, creativity. I was in a community organization that did education through the arts and did like plays and musicals and things like that were meant to have like inspirational and educational messages for the youth in the city of Detroit.
So
Yeah.
why don't you tell me now about, like, right now, what are you passionate about, or
Sure.
what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I am very passionate about social justice. I think I always was and was involved in sort of diversity and dialogue centered and kind of celebratory historical events, kind of like MLK Day type of things when I was growing up. But I think especially coming to college, something about college, I haven't quite figured out exactly what it is, but I think I've just become even more in touch with my racial identity, with my passion for and awareness of and knowledge and understanding of issues affecting especially the African American community, low income, urban communities, and not just things that are currently needing to be addressed, but kind of the way that those things have unfolded over history. And so I think that awareness definitely colors the way that I see the world and the way that I interact with it, and the way that I think about my future goals, because I really want to be someone who in some way addresses or works with other people to try to address past wrongs and redress things in such a way that we can have a more just and equitable society today.
So on that topic, what are your long-term plans, and how do you envision yourself getting there?
I am still figuring out exactly what my long-term plans are, but I do want to go into public service in some way, shape, or form. I would be interested in doing that at a community organizing and development level. I would be interested in doing that at the level of advocacy and organizational leadership. I would be interested in doing that even through public office or public policy in some capacity. I don't have a lot of experience with policy and politics, but it's something that I would be interested in, and I'm pursuing opportunities to learn more about what that could look like. And so that's something that's on my radar. But all I know is that I want to work with people, and so it's an interesting thing where I want to work with people, and I definitely want that one-on-one and that communal interaction, but I also want to impact systems and structures. And so trying to find out what is that medium for me that has that interaction, but also is making far-reaching change, but not necessarily only from behind a computer or at a desk writing, doing research and writing. But I also do love research and writing, and I would consider also academia. So at the same time that I'm a Truman Scholar, which is for public service, I'm also a Mellon Mays Fellow, which is for underrepresented minority students who want to pursue a PhD. And so I'm wanting to marry somehow my scholarship, my activism, and my desire to be engaged with community. I'll be interested to see what that turns out to look like.
And where does your passion for social justice come from? When did it start, for example?
I actually have been wondering that myself. And I think, like I said, I was involved in certain things when I was younger that were moving towards improving race relations, like diversity conferences and facilitated activities and dialogues and conferences and things like that at my high school level. I mean, I went to a diverse high school, so I think I was aware of racial inequality because I saw how, I was one of the only black students in a lot of my AP and honors classes. I saw how the black students that were in my school seemed to not come from the same socioeconomic background from other students, and I saw how there was a minority achievement gap, and so those things I became aware of at that level. And even being connected to an organization in Detroit, I just, I would, like I said, I maintain connections to the city, and so to move from the city of Detroit to a suburb, it's like night and day. And so I remember being struck by the fact that we would know when we were driving when we got to Detroit, because the landscape would completely change. It wouldn't be as safe. It wouldn't be as clean. It wouldn't be as generally aesthetically pleasing. And I didn't understand why it had to be that way. I also recognized that I was benefiting from an education by being in the suburbs, where public schools that I was going to in the suburbs might have been better than some of the private schools that were actually in the city. And I just thought, I just noticed those things, and I noticed those differences, and it made me uncomfortable, and I didn't think it was fair, because then you get to a place like Princeton and people point you out and act like you were just more hardworking than the other minority students who didn't make it to this place, or you were just more motivated, or you were a leader. And I'm just very much aware that I had class privilege, and I think that has a lot to do with me being at Princeton. And I know that when people want to ask you why you're successful, they want you to say things that are, specific to you and all about what you did and what's the secret, and that's all well and good. But actually, no, I don't think it's all well and good, because I think that sometimes we're ignoring the fact that the circumstances that people are coming of age under, the situations around them, really do have a lot to do with their outcomes. And I think that when we attribute success only to ourselves or our own doing, then we erase the experiences of people who didn't have the same opportunities, and we condemn them as somehow just less hardworking or less motivated, when really there were significant barriers to their ending up at the same place. And so I think that it's those types of inequalities that I have seen in my own life, and also, just in the makeup composition of our nation and stratification in our nation, that just makes me say there have got to be ways to systematically undercut some of the inequality that's happened, that's come from years and years of oppression and years of injustice. And I recognize that I think that I'm in a privileged position to have been able to come here, and probably privileged to go wherever I'm going. And I just hope that I can, in whatever space I'm in, amplify the voices of people who weren't able to get to those spaces.
I was wondering, let's say like I'm a high school student, and I'm in a situation where I feel like I have a context that is difficult to be in. How can I as an individual work even in those circumstances towards success, towards opportunities and things like that?
I mean, I think that in any context, mentorship is really important. I think that gravitating towards people who are steps ahead of you and who have accomplished things that are either similar to what you're interested in, or who just maybe have a little bit more experience or world knowledge to be able to speak into how you could get where you're going, is really important. And if you can choose mentors that really believe in you, I know that I've heard stories of people who have had counselors that discourage them from going to this school, or discourage them from achieving their best. But if at all possible, seek people out who will speak possibilities over you, who will speak hope to you, and who will share their wisdom. I think that's always helpful. I mean, once again, in any context, you want to make the best out of the situation that you're in, and so just accessing what it is that you can. So if you can take honors classes, if you can take AP classes, or if you can, even in the classes that aren't as challenging, challenge yourself, or ask for more challenging opportunities to grow through that work, or just be really creative. I guess it's a thing where you want to bloom where you're planted. And I think Yeah, and I think practically speaking, anything that's worth having is going to require sacrifice. And so um, putting in the time, and sometimes that means, staying in when you'd rather go out with your friends because you have homework or because you have a paper to write, or, um, spending that extra time or stepping outside of your comfort zone. I think that sometimes I've had to do things that people might think are uncomfortable, like asking for help when you need it, or trying new things when like it seems like no one else is doing that. And so I think challenging yourself and also bringing other people alongside of you who will support you in that are probably really helpful.
Let's talk a little bit about your college applications process.
Sure.
What was that like for you? And what do you wish you had known at the beginning of the process?
I mean, I think it was good. I don't exactly remember everything that I didn't know at the beginning, but I guess things that were helpful to know along the way were just what it is that colleges are looking for and looking at. And so sometimes that would mean going to information sessions that they're holding in different, cities around, or even webinars or online resources that kind of speak to what the university is about. I would call the admissions office and just talk to them about the different aspects of the process that I wasn't sure about. I'm actually in the process of applying to another program now, and so talking to current students I found is really helpful. I think that authenticity is really important as well, because I think honestly in person and in writing, people get annoyed when they feel like you're not being genuine, and or I don't think pretentiousness is ever the way to get where you're going, and so just be true to who you are in anything that you do or say or write, or in the process, just be authentic when you're writing your essay and when you're talking about the things that you've accomplished or the things that you've poured yourself into. I mean, studying for the test, that is kind of self-explanatory, I think, but just whether it's taking a class or checking a practice book out of the library, just finding ways to get practice rounds in for the different tests that they're giving. I mean, knowing that your test doesn't define you in the application process, but that it can be a good asset if you can prepare for it.
Yeah, I really like what you say about being genuine. I think it's so obvious when you're writing or speaking, if you're not truly being who you are. So I guess on that note, what are some values or principles that you choose to live by?
Well, honesty is definitely one of them. I'm so honest. It's probably to a point where it's kind of extreme. I will not lie even in my facial expression. I will not nod my head yes when I'm thinking no. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's hard because you always, you have pleasantries and you always want to be polite, but I'm just if I don't agree with something or if I don't believe something, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to project that. And if I do, then I will if the situation permits or if it's called for. I think, for me being just true to myself has always been important. And I think even more so as I go forward, because you get socialized into this culture of you need to network and you need to get ahead, and I have to catch myself, because I think that another value that I really, really want to hold on to is integrity, or I think valuing people just for who they are. And so I try to catch myself if I'm in a conversation with someone and it seems like I'm reading the conversation just for what can I get out of it, especially when I'm so it can be tempting because I'm kind of desperate to try to figure out what my life is going to be like, where am I going to go, and it's great to talk to people who like I said earlier are steps ahead of you and have wisdom, but also what does it look like to value them as an individual and just take an interest in them because they're another person, and to get to know them just on that level. And so I think being authentic in interactions with people is really important. And for me, faith is also really important. I think that's actually something that guides me in the way that I even interact with people, and want to value them, because I think about the way that God values me and the way that I want to be a conduit of that love towards other people. And so I think that my faith, just this idea that I have a purpose that is beyond myself, that is orchestrated by God and that is meant to impact the lives of others for the better. I think that is really a guiding principle in my life. And sometimes it can be to a fault, honestly, because sometimes I get so caught up in feeling like I have a purpose and everything has purpose that like I can agonize over decisions or, or sometimes struggle with regret. But there's also an upside to it because it allows me to really live passionately and pour myself a lot into the things that I decide to do.
Awesome. I have one last question
Sure.
for you today, and that is, I feel like to a lot of high school students looking at, people at places like Princeton or Yale, it's easy to think, wow, like they're so accomplished and that they've never really experienced failure or had to like been rejected in the past. So on that note, like what are some failures that you've been through? What did you learn from it and how did you overcome them?
Ending up in one place that is where you want to be doesn't mean that you've been accepted to every other thing that you've tried to do, right? And so I'm at Princeton, but I was, waitlisted and didn't get admitted to Harvard and Chicago and Yale, and I mean, I know that can sound kind of like, well, those are also really, really, really hard schools to get into, but I mean, I was disappointed because Harvard was my first choice, you know what I mean? And like, I was upset when I got deferred and I, thought that I was losing something that was a part of like what I needed in order to move forward or just a poor reflection on myself. And it kind of took my counselor saying, well, why don't you just apply to more schools, and me saying, okay, like, and just deciding that I would still keep trying and work towards multiple opportunities and knowing that not every single door will open, but it is worth it to keep trying and to see which one does. I think that, when I think about struggling academically, like math, oh my God, like math was like the bane of my existence, like in high school and middle school. And it was weird because, I'm taking all these other honors classes and I kind of had to decide, am I going to take honors math when I know that it's not even my best subject? Like, I could probably take the normal class and like do well in it rather than like take the harder class when it's not even something that I feel confident in. But I decided to go ahead into the honors track and take those classes, and that definitely meant a lot more time staying after school, working with my teachers, sometimes for hours on the things that I was struggling with. It meant that when I was used to getting straight A's, I once received a test with an F on it. It meant that, my first C, right before I graduated, was in BC Calc, the very last trimester of it. I'm not saying I recommend getting C's, like avoid them at all, like avoid them if you can, but like, I think that I grew a lot from challenging myself in that area and just not being afraid to confront the fact that I'm not perfect and I'm not able to do everything necessarily at the same level in every area of my life, but I can still give the same level of effort and give my best effort in every area and embrace challenges, and that can be a way to grow and still move forward. And those are a couple of things, and I think on a personal level, I think failures that I think back to in like middle and high school were just like not listening to my parents when they were overprotective and tried to make sure that I was, or what I thought they were being overprotective, and they tried to make sure that I hung out with the right crowd and didn't get too distracted by boys or things like that. And I just wish I would have listened to them. Like, when you have people in your life who have your best interests at heart, listen to them. It's not necessarily that's not necessarily something that I think I missed in terms of grades or academics, but just taking care of yourself on a personal level.
Thank you so much for sharing and for coming, talking with us today.
My pleasure.